as the comrade said, I'm from Gaza, and I arrived in South Africa 2 months after the genocide, exactly on the 6th of December, 2023. But before I start talking about my experience together with my family, my colleagues from Al-Aqsa University and my students, I just want to tell you the message, or rather the messages that I have been told by our people in Gaza. The first message is from more than 73,000 martyrs who have died as a result of the genocide that is still taking place in Gaza. A message from my close friend, the head of the orthopedic department at the Shifa Hospital, Dr. Adnan Al-Bursh, who was arrested by the Israeli occupation forces. And one day before that, he was with me on the phone complaining about the impossibility of treating so many patients, so many injured coming, flooding a Shifa Hospital and Al Auda Hospital in the north. He was arrested, taken to the infamous Sdaytuman prison, tortured to death. In fact, he was raped by 3 soldiers and bled to death. So I have a message from his wife, Yasmin. I also have a message from the family of my late comrade, Yahya Abu Khalil, my former student, who was killed together with his wife, who was also my former student, and his 2 children. Another message from more than 38 colleagues of mine who were killed by apartheid Israel from Al-Aqsa University, and 139 academics from the 5 universities of Gaza. All those messages are directed to these heroes, to you, that we in Gaza, we in Palestine, in fact, we do not want sympathy. That we are fed up with the so-called international community. What we want is true solidarity. What we want is not only an end to the siege on Gaza. Of course we want an end to the siege of Gaza. But this siege and this genocide comes within a larger context. The occupation of historic Palestine, apartheid and settler colonialism in Palestine. The first thing that attracted my eye, my attention, as soon as I arrived here, was this: a united Palestine for all who live in historic Palestine. Unfortunately, this is not the official position of the South African government. This is not the official position of most of the so-called international community. Unfortunately, governments, including our leadership, are still talking about a racist solution, the so-called 2-state solution. People, journalists keep asking me, what is the solution to the Gaza question? There is no Gaza question. There's a question of Palestine. The Gaza question can be solved if we liberate Palestine. And therefore, what you are doing, actually, is one step towards the liberation of historic Palestine. I was talking to my niece last night, who's also a journalist. She writes in Palestine Chronicle, Electronic Intifada, Middle East Eye, etc., etc. And I told her that I will be talking to comrades from South Africa who will be joining the Global Sumud Flotilla. And before that, I was talking to another friend of mine. And the question was, do you think they will be able to break the siege? The siege, the tight siege, has been tightened. Meaning that my brother, who is a cancer patient, who has finished taking his chemotherapy and who needs radiation right now, cannot leave Gaza in order to be treated. So what are we to do? My family has not tasted meat for the last 3 years. I personally, and I don't like to talk about myself, but this is just an example. And I'm not complaining. We Palestinians don't like to complain. We don't like to complain. We want action. I have lost my house. I have lost my car. I have lost my family house. I have lost my in-laws' house. I have lost my university. We have lost my kids' school. And then we are still trying. We are still fighting. the question to be raised to our comrades here. Of course, we don't want it only to be a performative act. It's not about performance. We understand the symbolism. We want to break the siege. But how can we talk about breaking the siege when the government of South Africa, the only government in the world that had the courage to take apartheid Israel to the ICJ, still fuels genocide? Literally, by becoming the first exporter of coal to apartheid Israel, literally fueling the genocide. When there are South African soldiers committing war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza, what is the South African government waiting for? If you say you can't do that, why did, as Comrade Feroz said, the Colombians manage to do that? And therefore, we want practical steps. I mean, we have to go beyond symbolic acts. The Rafah crossing is the only exit Gaza has to the external world. It has to be open. If governments do not intervene to force, to compel the Israeli government to put an end to the ongoing genocide, the ongoing siege, I can tell you, 73,000 will be just, nothing. By next year, the number will double and triple. I have gone through every single massacre in Gaza. 2009, 2012, 2014, 2021. And I am a member of the BDS movement. And the question we have been raising in every single statement, where is the international community? And I'm sorry to say, the international community has failed us. The international community has failed Marwan al-Barghouti. The international community has failed Dr. Adnan al-Bursh. I personally have lost 54 of my cousins. And I'm talking about whole families being wiped out, literally. Literally. I can give you a list of the names of my cousins and their children. Every single day, we go to bed, trying to sleep, me and my family, not knowing whether the following day will bring bad news, i.e. the death, a member of our direct family or not. And therefore the question is, what is to be done? Now, and I'm addressing our comrades here. I'm sure you must have heard about the BDS movement. Now, definitely you need to understand the BDS. By going to Gaza, you must make it absolutely clear that you are heeding the call made by the Palestinians of Palestine. One thing we are sensitive about is that I have experience of dealing with the Gaza Freedom March. And I can tell you, we had discussions with comrades coming from the global north. White supporters of Palestine trying to dictate to us, trying to tell us what to say. Don't talk about Zionism. Don't talk about right of return. Don't talk about liberation of all of Palestine. And I'm saying, we don't want people to tell us what to do. We don't want people to lecture us on what to do. If you are coming to Palestine, and I know that you know this because we've learned from you. There are lessons that we've learned from South Africa. From you, your successes and your mistakes. We've learned, definitely, and we deal with you as part of us, as part of the struggle. We know very well, without the intervention of international civil society, it would be very, very hard for us to liberate Palestine. We issued our first call for BDS, and when I say we, I mean Palestinian civil society. And I'm talking about almost all Palestinian civil society sectors, academics, women, labor, students, etc., etc. In other words, there is a consensus around the BDS call. We issued our first BDS call in 2005, calling on the international community to boycott apartheid Israel the same way it had boycotted apartheid South Africa, to divest from international companies benefiting from our operation. And three, we want sanctions. And I can tell you, the world is boycotting Israel, in the words of Benjamin Netanyahu and Ben Gvir. The world is divesting now from international companies benefiting from our operation. But we want the world to impose sanctions. It was only when the world imposed sanctions against apartheid South Africa, it was compelled to release Nelson Mandela in 1990, where you voted for him as the first black president of multiracial, multi-religious South Africa in 1994. What we want is the same thing. What you've achieved in South Africa, we want your support for that. Thank you so much.